Hey everyone, today's episode is the first edition of a monthly tradition where I sit down with a few folks and just talk about whatever's interesting in the industry. I mean, it won't be a tradition if it's garbage, but we'll try it out for a few months. Before we get started though, two things. First, thank you to those listeners who have donated to my Patreon. I'm only a few donors away from having my monthly costs covered, so that's really cool. I'll be sending out rewards next week, so start thinking about where you're going to put those sweet Plastic Weekly stickers. I know your water bottles are all completely covered already, so you're probably going to have to make some sacrifices. Sorry about that. Secondly, Montreal is hosting the Pan Am Youth Championships from October 30th to November 5th, and the organizers need all the support they can get. If you're in town as a parent or as a competitor or just as a spectator, please consider volunteering just a little bit of your time. Even if you can't judge, shoot them an application anyway so they know you can be there for a couple hours to help out in any way. Visit climbingpanam2017.com and send in an application. I'm trying to get out there to help whatever way I can, and the climbers from across the Americas would really appreciate it if you did too. That's climbingpanam2017.com. All right, on to the show.
All right, to talk about everything that's happened this month, or roughly like that, and other things going on in the industry. I'm sitting here in Base Camp Climbing in downtown Toronto. You probably have heard of it as that old porn gym built inside the old Metro Theatre on Bloor Street in downtown Toronto. With me right now, the general manager. Nailed it. General manager, Max Summerlee of Base Camp. How's it going, Max?
Great, Tyler. Thanks for having me on.
And to his right is Hannah Mandrish, who's basically in charge of the route setting here at Base Camp. How are you, Hannah?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tyler?
I'm excellent, and making a comeback for the second time this month, Mr. Shaun Hunter.
Woo! I'm one of the only brown people that Tyler knows.
Dude just destroyed the volume on this. Just after we. Okay, all right. Shaun, you're back from World Youth Championships now.
Yes.
That's kind of where we left off the last time.
I've never seen so many drunk people in my life at Youth Worlds. It was a fantastic trip.
I'll assume you're talking about adults. But I kind of wanted to talk about that because it was a big event. It was the first time the kids have qualified for the Youth Olympic Games in 2018 in Buenos Aires. And it was just a lot of new stuff. Huge new gym, a really big team for Canada. Now that you're back, do you have any reflections coming off of it at your first World Youth Championships?
That was the biggest and longest comp I've ever coached at. It was in 3 ISOs at one point for semis and finals. There was one category that had over 200 athletes in it. That's like bigger than our nationals, and this was one category. The gym was one of the biggest gyms I've ever been into, and that was just the inside of the gym. There was like 4 or 5 or 6 outdoor walls that were part of the competition, and just like other outdoor walls for members. It was just what an experience, just being there with the Canadian team and all the coaches. So, yeah, it was awesome.
I want to talk about how many people we actually sent to this comp, because now that everybody's back, I've been hearing that the Canadian delegation is one of probably the biggest delegations. I'm not sure how many countries max out the number of invites they can take.
I think I don't know for sure, but I think the biggest team there was Russia.
Okay.
With 72 athletes.
Jesus.
And then I think it was the U.S. and then maybe Canada. Maybe we were like 3rd or 4th or 5th, something like that.
But I think we're one of the few countries that tries to fill all the spots. It sounds like that's the impression.
I know in the past they might have tried to fill all the spots for Youth Worlds. I know this past Youth Worlds we did not fill all the spots. We're allowed to take 4 athletes per category. There was some categories we only took 3.
Okay.
For Pan Am's, it's a different story. We're maxing out. We want the athletes to get as much experience as possible at Pan Am's.
That sounds super reasonable to me. So kind of where my question is at, and this is just for opinions, because you're not in charge of the athlete selection.
I am not in charge.
You're just kind of the witness. Japan walked away with double digits in medals and sent a relatively small team, and they have kind of set the bar of the top country right now, possibly United States also doing super well, and Russia in some different fields. They didn't have to send the entire every person they could possibly muster, right? we sent a huge delegation. We didn't walk away with any medals, which is maybe reasonable because we're a small
country. We did get in the
country,
finals for
which is a huge deal.
Was,
I'm not.
right.
None of this is to like belittle the achievements because we did walk away with some really good finishes, but a whole lot of Canadian families spent a ton of money sending kids, and of course coaching resources and all that kind of stuff. So who benefits from us sending as many athletes as we do?
I think the athletes benefit from going. Like, even if they're not world-class athletes, I think the experience they get will help them in other aspects of their life or profession. I know a couple years ago, I competed on the World Cup circuit. I went to 4 World Cups. I'm not by no means the strongest climber in the country, but that really helped me with my coaching and route setting.
Okay.
And I really valued going to those comps. I know some of the athletes who are aging out, they're coaching. One athlete is Lucas. I know he has his own group at Boulders. He has a group of D category kids. So I think his experiences at these comps, competing at the international level, is really going to help him as a coach. So I think you can't just take away medals. You have to look at the experience that these athletes are going to take away.
Okay, that's fair.
If I could interject as somebody who honestly has very little to do with the competition scene, especially the youth, part of me wonders whether it's just a mandated difference in perspective in what we're doing. It feels like it's get as many people there, the mentality here, versus maybe a higher competition focus on the athletes that have the potential from some of these other countries. Is that a feeling that you get being part of it, or is it really just to give opportunities for further advancement, or is it to give opportunities for everybody?
I think it's a mandate. We have to send a certain amount of athletes, but it's also beneficial for these athletes to have those experiences. I know some countries only send a couple athletes. Like I think the UK only sent like a handful of athletes, and I know other countries like France and Germany, like if you don't do well at one international comp, you're off the team, and someone else takes your spot. So, but it's not like that in Canada. I think one day it'll get there. Like if you look at the OCF, our comps are growing like year after year. Like this year we kicked D category out because the comps are just way too big. And
Spoiler alert to anybody that doesn't know it yet. Your kids are gone.
So I think the sport is exploding in Canada, but we're still, before we get, those athletes like Japan or Germany or Austria, I think it's going to be like another decade or so. Like we're exploding, but we don't have the numbers yet in Canada.
Do we need to do that to get to the point where we can focus on that top level of athletes and provide that for them?
I think with a bigger pool, you'll find more athletes that are able to compete at that level. So I think, yeah, I'm being very careful with what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad for you because you're stuck in the middle of it. I'm really glad there's a Pan Ams this year, where we can get all those kids going. Pan Ams sounds like it's a hard endeavor for anybody to host.
Oh.
But you wish one would happen every single year so we could send everybody to Pan Ams and hopefully do a more selective crew to Worlds. But I mean, so long as Pan Ams are every 3 years, if we're lucky, then it's just what's gonna have to be, I guess.
Pan Am's, it's awesome that we're hosting it this year.
Yep.
And I think we will have the biggest Canadian team going to that event. I think we're gonna have around 60 athletes, which is just
a lot, man.
A lot of time in ISO. I will.
This is kind of my deal, and we just spent the summer on the OCF, kind of working to build a new comp season for a growing field of athletes. And when you look at these events, the Pan Ams is going to be stretched over, I think it's 6 or 7 days in Montreal. It needs a ton of infrastructure, needs a ton of volunteer hours. There's no money in it for anybody, really. And so when we send 60 kids, that's cool, but it feels like it's crazy unsustainable given what's required on the back end to support that. 60 kids in a bouldering circuit that's a day by itself, man. That's a huge chunk of time, and that's a single category. It takes up an entire wall. And I want, I don't want to sound like that guy. I care a lot about these kids, but you just got to say, how long can we keep doing this where every country sends every possible person that answers the invite, and then whatever poor organization has to figure out a way to deal with all that stuff. That's that's nuts.
Like I've heard through the grapevine, the IFSC they might possibly remove junior from international comps because they're essentially open athletes.
Yeah.
So in the next coming years, maybe not next year, but after that, it might only be B and A categories.
Yeah.
And I think this year was so big because it was a qualifier for the Youth Olympics. Like
Yeah.
I don't think next year in Saanich will be nearly as big. I hope to God.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting, and it'll be nice to host it in Canada so we can all go and we can all observe and just like be I can be crotchety from the sidelines now instead of from the other side of the planet. I want to bring it in house, and I stepped in here. This is like my neighborhood gym now, so this is kind of where I come to hang out and climb. And I walked in, and there's a bunch of auto belays in this gym, and I walked in, and one of them had like a full backfill auto belay in here, which I've like dreamed about in like a what if in a crazy world would that kind of work? And then I show up, and there's this auto belay, and I'll post a picture on the website for it. But it is a full-on backfill splatter project wall on an auto belay, and in terms of difficulty, it actually looks like it fills the entire range. Hannah, first of all, why did that happen?
You can blame it on me.
There's a number of good reasons. Part of it was member feedback. We did a sort of a first attempt at a splatter wall a few months ago with a different hold color, and some people really liked it. And we decided that when we made our recent hold order from Technic and brought in like the standard green color, that we're going to phase out our neon green. And so we saw a perfect opportunity to throw all of the holds on the wall, and that was Max's job. We did a big overnight reset of the entire auto belay wall.
I should offer jelly beans to whoever can count actually how many there are on there, but I think it's something like 220 holds.
About how long did that take you then?
It took me about 3.5 hours,
Okay.
but I was also trying to set it so that there was a range of difficulty across it.
Yeah.
Being in the location we're in, we definitely see a lot of off-the-street traffic. Somebody walking by for a restaurant on Saturday night, so we get the range of climbers through here, and we don't have as many auto belays as I would like, and therefore they're not always as accessible as they want. We never have all the jugs we want, as every gym knows. So it was a good way to include a lot of climbing without a massive amount of impact on the gym, and we do have a high population of individual climbers. So it gives it a pretty high repeat value as well. It'll be a slower rotation than the rest of the climbs, but yeah, there were quite a few reasons for doing it, and it seems to get pretty good usage.
Well, that's kind of what I was curious about, because backfill, has it's got a spot in the culture in some parts of the world, but in North America especially, it's definitely been ignored over the last little while, and you see it in places. On auto belay, it's definitely rare. You guys have 5 auto belays in here. You took up a fifth of that for something that is all one color. There's no tape. There's no guidance at all. You guys put a nice plaque at the bottom that kind of gives ideas of different challenges, like, find the hardest route, find the easiest, things like that. But do you find that people are using that or having the same kind of experience on that wall as they do on the other, monochromatic set individual route auto belays?
I think that it provides a different challenge versus what you normally see when you climb in indoor gyms, especially monochromatic gyms. It's very clear what the intended route is, but when you come into a climb like a boulder wall or an auto belay where it's backfill, all the same color, it really opens up a chance for the climber to become even more interactive with the climb and make their own route as they climb it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to be cursing at the moment we go to take it down. I can tell you that much.
Well, you put it up, so if there's any spinners, it's your fault.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, true. It also is really nice because we have limited space here, and that's constantly our challenge. And I know a lot of gyms face that, but it gives us the opportunity to have somebody come in and train on a route when we don't really have a good training area. It's something that is constantly on our list of things to do, is improve our training facilities.
Yep.
But it gives some of those members that do want to be doing training laps like that, it gives them an opportunity to do that. And honestly, from a commercial perspective, I don't know how much sense it makes us at really hard routes on auto belays. So this allows somebody to climb something pretty hard without us setting a specific route that is therefore inaccessible to a large population of climbers.
You mentioned like opportunity a bunch, and setting a backfill, whether it's on an auto belay or a project wall, it's full, like it's literally all about opportunity. You have as many choices as you want. You can do whatever you like. But I always find, or I found in the past at least around here in the Toronto area, is that most people, they might see that opportunity, but it's not something they're attracted to. The people that use backfill most are people who are being told to use it. They're being coached into, like make up a thing, or they're getting something made up for them. Most of the people that use it are getting a problem made up by somebody else. So I'm a huge fan of it because, we all see the potential of it and we say, look at this tool that can be used by so many people. But then
don't worry, I was listening to
empty
your
wall,
podcast
man.
on the way here. I have Shaun's words ringing in my head right now. It's true, and I think there's something we gravitated towards the monochromatic setting for a reason. Aesthetically, it's a lot easier to see your roots. Obviously, as Shaun said, you come in here because you want to climb climbs that are set by people. You don't want to make those decisions. This is a way to cater to a small percentage of people that do. I'm a gym rat. I spent my whole life in gyms, and with the guys that I used to climb with, we would climb the circuit of problems there were, and then we'd make up our own. And that was just, it allows a certain level of creativity that is sometimes otherwise taken away from indoor route climbing that I think you sometimes find in outdoor route climbing. There are other ways to get up climbs, whereas we try and set relatively forced prescriptive routes with certain sequences in here. So it's definitely something we're going to try out. It may not be forever, but it allows us to bridge a certain gap and serve, I think, members of our community that aren't served otherwise.
Okay, yeah.
Have you guys ever thought of backfilling it with just with roots, with 8 roots of different colors?
That
Or do you not have the amount of holds?
We could. I think obviously with the color coordination it becomes quite difficult, but it does. The way that it's also been set, I've tried to vary the types of holds that are there, so you could do a route of just pinches or just crimps or just slopers if you wanted to train. And right now we're starting the foundations for a high performance program, not necessarily a competitive team, but we want people to have that training easy and accessible. And a lot of our technique classes require people to be climbing on our walls, and I would rather not have to set a route every time. This way I can get them to just tape holds on my fill route.
So I guess my question is, I've never been out to Asia to climb. I know, Shaun, you have.
Yes.
There were comps. I'm not sure if you hit a ton of gyms while you were there.
I hit a couple gyms when I was there, There's no AC in any of them.
1-star review. And, of course, you went in the summer. The time I've spent in European gyms, my memory is always, I end up going around 7 o'clock, like a typical time. It's going to be their busiest time of day. And at the couple of really high-quality gyms I went to, half of the traffic seemed to be around the multiple different backfill walls they had, which could be spread around the gym in different places, different angles. And half of the population was on the set routes. And even seeing in the most recent gym I was at Copenhagen Boulders, there was a clear cap on the difficulty in the set routes. And at some point, those would stop being interesting for you. Do you think there's a chance we ever get to that? Or are we just too, there's most of the members that you guys have here at Base Camp or any gym in Toronto, this is their first run-in with climbing. Their first impression they get is monochromatic routes now. A lot of these people don't know what tape on a route means, right? Is it possible to take those people and go the other direction and say, here's this thing we used to do way back in the day. It's got some merit. Is that something we can expect the market to do? Is it worth it, or are we done with that?
I don't know where the cycles are going to go. I think we've definitely seen it fluctuate, and you can go all over the world and see the status of route setting in entirely different phases. To go back to a place where we have just fill, I don't know if the North American market would necessarily develop that way, and I think partly other markets, like for example in Asia and Europe, some of that's dictated by space. Some of those gyms are 800 square feet at most, and so they want to put a hold in every bolt hole or screw it on wherever they can. My ideal world, I'd love to see walls where you have set problems in color and then actually a monochromatic backfill. So just use all black holds as your back, and then you can have the best of both worlds. But who the heck has the budget for that?
Yeah.
And really, what is the point? Because at the end of the day, that route there just used 200 holds, and I could have set 8 other routes with it, right?
Yeah.
So it is a question of where you draw the line with, is it commercially viable to be doing backfill? Does it make sense? And I think aesthetics in North America play a huge part in that, and we are also using massively bigger holds than a lot of the other markets. So in logistics of space, it's quite different.
Yeah.
Not to mention the 3.5 hours of filling time.
And nobody's going to want to pay anybody to just set fill routes everywhere.
The gym I was at in Innsbruck for Worlds, they had some, some autoblade routes. And the autoblades were actually, they were sliding autoblades, so it was really, really cool. They had like 3 of them.
How far could they move? Like, what was their limit?
Maybe, I didn't climb on them, Adrian did, and maybe 15 feet.
Wow.
They slid. It was so,
Whoa.
their autoblade wall was maybe the size of this gym, maybe a little bit less. And it was backfilled with roots. So it was all different colors, but just tens and tens of roots per blade. It was just it was insane. You could just go up and down. They're all 60 feet high. And the rest of the gym was just set normally. There was no top rope in the gym. It was lead only with a couple auto belays. They had one bouldering area upstairs, which was completely backfilled. And I think that was more for the Austrian team to train. They had a sign you may be asked to leave if the team is. And I think in Ontario, backfilled areas of gyms, for bouldering, it seems like just a dead zone with no one in it. I feel like people need direction.
Yeah.
I go
as a product, it's not very.
Yeah, I
attractive,
don't want to
man.
go to a restaurant and make my own food. Not saying I think a route is different though. I think you could get different. I think routes it's a little bit easier, especially the route I'm looking at now. It's on a vert wall. It's easier for beginners or people who climb moderately to get up that and know what kind of holds there. It's harder for a beginner to get up a bouldering wall if it's just a backfill.
Yeah.
And I see gyms like Block Shop with a really awesome backfilled wall, and that's the emptiest part of the gym. Either location I go to, it's. But for routes, I think for auto blades for sure, for beginners and someone who's trying to train, it's awesome.
We should just have every gym should have a designated backfill wall that's for anybody that complains about the route setting.
Yeah, that's right.
People don't complain about route setting. What are you talking
Never.
about?
So Basecamp is, if I have this right, it's the newest gym in Toronto. I can't think of one that's opened since.
Yeah,
then, right?
Toronto proper. We'll call it that.
Yeah. So, and that's going to be an important detail. And I'm just going to kind of spout my mouth off about stuff I think for maybe no reason, and you guys get to argue
You're
with me.
good at it.
For the thanks, man. For the longest time, when I think about what gym you go to as a customer, the first one is what's easiest to get to, right? If you start with a market that has one gym in every major area, you're probably not going to spend a ton of time driving, especially around here where traffic is awful at the busiest times of day. So ease of getting there is a huge deal. At some point, the density gets so much that you've got multiple options, right? And so, you'll end up visiting all of them, but your main gym, since there's no difference in difficulty to get there, it's going to become the one that the gym that most serves you as a climber, whatever that happens to be. You might be an auto belay slayer, or you might be a backfill guy. You might be somebody training for competitive. Toronto's a neat place because we've had a pretty high density of gyms for a while. We've had, kind of 3 downtown gyms since, for at least a decade or two. And it's only gotten denser in the last little while. But recently we're starting to see some people who are within walking distance or biking distance of all these gyms in Toronto. And just like we all drove out to Mississauga to hit up the block, and this is going to sound like an advertisement, but for some reason, a lot of people, especially ones that are training possibly competitively, are spending time out there. And so my question is, Toronto's hitting this density where you're probably not going to see too much infill of gyms between each other. It'll just keep expanding. But if downtown gyms are losing some people to gyms outside of the city where you got to hop in a car, get on a really crappy highway, Toronto's the world's, at least North America's longest commutes. What are we doing wrong downtown? Or what are some of these gyms at least doing wrong downtown to lose customers to a place that's not even in the city?
I don't think gyms are doing anything wrong. The downtown gyms, I come to these downtown gyms and they seem really packed. when I've come to base camp before, or Boulder's DuPont or Joe's. And even like I guess Rock Oasis is kind of still like downtown-ish.
Yeah,
like,
I'd consider
call
it.
it, yeah, for sure.
they're packed. I think there's going to be more gyms opening up downtown because I've heard of that they might be.
Yep.
And no, I think there's just going to be more climbers in the future, and all these gyms just going to have. Like I was just at Worlds, and the Norwegian coach told me in Tokyo there's over 200 bouldering gyms. Like they might all be pretty tiny, but I think Toronto is there's gonna be more gyms popping up more and more in Toronto, and everyone will have a gym that you could just walk to. So yeah, I think maybe the competitive climbers, which are like the competitive climbers who are serious, they might be gym hopping a little bit more. But
What are they looking for when they gym hop?
What are they looking for? I think quality and problems, a variety of different styles. Features, those compy style moves, but I don't think gyms are making money off those competitive climbers. Like I think gyms are making money off of beginners and members. Like I know that.
Yeah,
so
I'd agree with you. I also think I've noticed a bit of a trend in the consumer market as well, as you're seeing people around our age, people with a little bit more disposable income, making that effort to go to the other gyms and holding punch cards to multiple facilities. And we're definitely seeing that as a trend here. It's affordable. People are really afraid of commitment, and so the 10 pass is great for that. We've made ours transferable between two people, and it doesn't expire. So there is a certain attractive factor to that as well. And I think you also, with these different gyms, you see different consumers finding the gym that works well for them. So you will have certain individuals training at specific facilities because it's good for them, and I think there's certain facilities that work better for beginners and others that don't. And there's definitely gyms that make their decisions about who they're catering, and therefore customers will make their decisions accordingly. And I will make the effort to drive out to Mississauga because I appreciate the experience there.
I think the other thing about Mississauga is they don't have birthday parties. They don't do I don't think they have any kids programs except for a little comp team. Like there's not a lot of kids in there, and for like older climbers, especially competitive climbers, you're going to want an environment like without screaming kids.
Is that what downtown gyms need to start thinking about if they want to, maintain a viable brand? So there's some old gyms in Toronto. Generally, in a gym's life cycle, after a certain amount of time, you will renovate your location, right? And presumably, you're going to do that to stay relevant. Do gyms have to start making choices about who they want to cater to? Because at the moment, most gyms in Toronto are fairly wide open to what customers they cater to. I could probably book a birthday party at any gym in Toronto if I wanted to. I could probably book a group, workplace thing. I could probably have a good rope session at all of them. I could get a good boulder session at most of them. Is there going to be conflict with all these gyms trying to do everything rather than, you see some cities, our favorite one to idolize is Montreal, obviously, where you've got gyms that decide, we're going to do this one thing and we're going to do this other thing really well. Is that something we need to worry about, or is Toronto just going to stay this thing where everybody can do everything everywhere?
I don't know. I've been working in climbing gyms since 1999, so I've seen a big change in what's going on.
You're
and
like
I think
you're a fetus at that point, right?
I was probably as annoying as one. I really think, having gone through the process and seen the opening and development of a bunch of gyms, it actually is entirely about ownership directions, because I think the business we're in is viable no matter what level of interest or outcome that you want to see in it. You can have a sustainable business with a climbing gym, but you can also choose to specialize and say, I want to do birthday parties and I'm going to do really well. Look at the clip and climb model. I know that Grand River is planning on putting one in Kitchener-Waterloo. They're going to, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's like called Go Bananas or something like that.
I remember seeing it on Facebook.
Yeah.
I can't remember though. Yeah, you're
But
right.
they've recognized specifically that they have a market in their area that is untapped, and they also have heard the feedback from their customers saying, we don't want these kids running around. But what these customers don't realize is the kids are paying for that space. Grand River's been able to expand once, and now they're going to try and shift all their kids into the other section, the other part of their building. So you might see gyms doing that, but here in Toronto, it's difficult. Spaces are premium, and for a gym to redo a 20-year-old building, it's next to impossible. You might as well be redoing the whole thing. And I know the complications that come with old buildings and the amount of work and money that can go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the cool thing about gyms in Toronto, there's a lot of them, but they all seem distinctively different. Like, some...
How would you distinguish some of the gyms? And we don't have to name names, but what are the differences between these gyms?
Like even there's not even that many like Waltopia gyms in Toronto. Like
for better or for worse?
No, I'm just saying. Like there's one. I think there's 2 Waltopia gyms, and they're both very different. There's some older gyms that are pretty much woodies. There's a gym that's like Rockworks. There's one that's El Dorado. Like I can't remember. It's On Site, the gym in Etobicoke. Like they're all very different. And they all have different things that people will want. Like I think that's why people are buying these 10 days for so many different locations and just gym hopping around, because you could find whatever you're looking for, you could find in a gym in Toronto. I think that's why Toronto gyms don't really have to specialize that much, because we're all just so distinctively different.
If Toronto keeps expanding gyms, are we going to have enough route setters?
No.
We already don't.
We don't.
No, we don't.
And I think there's a difficulty. We were just talking about this before, but in the development process of, potentially one of the most subjective and arbitrary things we've all ever taken part of in our lives. We're all setters here, and it's a challenge. It really is. And the development of new setters detracts from creating a product, and it's very hard to strike that balance between the development of new setters and the continued quality control of what you're putting out.
The one other thing about Basecamp that I just want to touch on is that you have attached a cafe here, Black Rock Coffee and Bar. Is that what we're calling? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
How does this kind of addition to a gym change the culture, and do you feel like it really has a step ahead in other business models by attaching something like this? Is it something that other gym openers should consider throwing in as part of their model?
I definitely think they should. I think our situation is unique in the fact that it is an entirely separate business, although it's housed in the same building, owned by the same owner.
Yeah.
So we are affiliated, but there's no physical entrance into the cafe. And I think for anybody who is considering it as an addition to a gym, and I would strongly recommend it as an additional revenue stream, I think there's definitely ways that it can be looked at for it to be incorporated within the business. We had an end goal of licensing our cafe, which we have. But that, of course, comes with its own set of issues. And having the space fully separated was realistically the most feasible way to negotiate licensing that space. Whether it has... It's really difficult at this point to gauge the impact it has for our customers necessarily, but we do provide discounts to our members. I basically work in a coffee shop 5 days a week, so that's interesting for my life.
You do your
What
gym
a
work
hipster.
in a coffee shop.
Do all
just to
my
be
gym
clear.
work in a coffee. I
You're not-
actually
but
work
you're
in a
not
climbing
behind
gym,
the
but I'm
bar.
never in
Yeah.
it. It's amazing. One of the, I think, the unique things, even though it's fully separated, is we have that viewing window.
Yeah.
So it makes it amazing for parents on a Saturday morning. They drop the kids off for 2-hour climb, and they go in and have their lattes, and they don't even have to hear their kids screaming.
But
so
they still
from
get to
that
watch it.
perspective, it's really great. And also, it closes a little earlier than the rest of the gym, so we're able to use it for corporate bookings, which is fantastic. When you have a space and you can put whatever price you want on it to use it, especially on Bloor Street, it makes it a very attractive option for corporate groups coming in here.
Yeah.
I think it's just the future. Like a lot of the high-end gyms I've gone to in the U.S. and some in Europe, and even like Block Shop in Montreal, they have a full-on menu and drinks, and gyms in Europe, like you can get alcohol, beer, and whatnot right there. It's just, it makes sense like to have a restaurant in your gym, and just like you don't want people to leave your gym. You want them to climb, and then you want them to do yoga, and then you want them to lift some weights, and then get a coffee, and then just, get some food and eat there. You want them to stay in the gym as long as possible.
I honestly, where you were most recently working, you guys had that freezer just full of like popsicles and stuff. That's all I need. If I can get one of those at every gym, that keeps me happy, man. Just like a Klondike bar every couple hours, especially at a competition where you're there for 12 hours and you just slam ice cream the whole day. Yeah, it's a good time. I want to wrap up just so you guys anybody that's heard of Basecamp from outside of Canada has probably seen the Kickstarter and just its history as a gym that was originally a reputable theater and then not such a reputable theater, and now the newest climbing gym in Toronto. What kind of transitional stories have you guys experienced as the community starts to accept this place as a gym rather than the metro
We've
as it was
been
known?
very welcome to the neighborhood, let's just say that. It's, I think, for a lot of the families and the people in the area, it's been a bit of an eyesore. It sat vacant for a while. And we obviously bring an entirely different clientele to the neighborhood. And there's been I think there's a huge resurgence in this neighborhood. You're seeing a lot of gentrification happening anyway, but we do occasionally have former customers coming by to see if we are still playing movies. I would just like to go on the record saying we're not. Just check the internet if you're looking for those.
Good stuff. Yeah, I want to thank you guys very much for taking the time to chat today, and hopefully we'll get to do it again soon. Max Summerlee, thanks very much for the time.
Thank you, Tyler.
And Hannah Mandrish, thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
Shaun Hunter, thanks again, dude.
Anytime, Tyler.
That's it for this week's episode of Plastic Weekly. Thanks to Max Summerlee, Hannah Mandrish, and Shaun Hunter, of course, for answering my questions, and thanks to you guys for listening. Did you guys enjoy that? If you like hearing us just blather about stuff, let me know. It's not something I want to do a lot of, but maybe we'll do it once a month. Plastic Weekly is presented by me, Tyler Norton. If you like this episode, please leave a review on iTunes, or if you've got some extra change you can throw around, consider supporting me at my Patreon at patreon.com/plasticweekly. Make sure you visit plasticweekly.com to find footnotes, references, and other bonus content related to our episodes, including photos of Basecamp's backfilled auto belay. It's pretty cool. If you want to get in touch with me, you can leave a comment at plasticweekly.com, and you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can send me an email to tyler@plasticweekly.com with your comments, concerns, questions, compliments. Just let me know you're out there. Somewhere. Good luck to everyone competing this weekend. We'll be thinking about you. Talk to you next week.